you all stated something along the lines of us having like a vast array of things on our resumes. You said that it's more than really just the grades, but what is it that you all look at on the resumes that you say, oh, this may give them a better chance to actually have the opportunity to get the interview?
Let me repeat the question if I make sure I get it right so everyone else knows what the question was. The question was that we've all commented on things that we look at on resumes, and that there are other things that that we look at. And the question was, what other things do we look at? Did I get that right? Okay. Anybody?
It depends on what stage you're at in your life. But let's say, for example, you're just coming out of law school, all right, and you've gone from college to law school. Then what I look at, because I'm a community person, I look at what have you done in terms of your community. You know, not just being involved in the Student Bar Association, but outside of that, what have you done to help out your community, to promote the other people as well? What type of work have you done? What kind of road did you travel to get to where you're at? Some people had to support their way through school. They had to work while they were going through school. That shows me that you are serious, that you're dedicated, you're going to be devoted, you're going to be the type of person that I want, that's going to roll up their sleeves. So I'm looking for a lot of the intangibles, and it kind of depends at what point you are in your life in terms of, if you're just coming out of law school, haven't gone straight through college and so on and so forth, then I want to look at other things that you've done.
If your grades are not the greatest, I'm looking at, well, what else was going on, or what other things were you doing to sort of maybe explain why your grades are not the greatest. And if someone's, an evening student and they're working full time, that says a lot. You can juggle a lot of things. Anybody else want to comment?
Right, and even if you are just went straight from high school to college to law school, there are many opportunities in college and law school for you to show your potential, and that's what we're looking for. I'm looking for someone that I think can be independent, that I can give an assignment and they're going to do it, because I'm really not able to sit down and talk with you 10 times a day. I can't repeat the question. So I'm looking at what your law school experiences were, what organizations, what leadership roles did you have, because we are looking for people that reflect us. I do a lot of stuff, and I need a multitasker, so that's what I'm looking for. So it's important to put down, especially if you have if you don't have work experience. Because a lot of judges say, well, she's never worked anywhere. But that's great. If you didn't have to work, that's great. If you could go college, law school, but there should be something in there that shows you took an interest in something, you got involved in an organization. And I also look to see if you did anything for the neighborhood, the community you live in, or the city you live in.
We also look for language capabilities. If you can do more than one language, and I think that's true in a lot of courts in the U.S. now too. If you have Spanish capability, fluent in Spanish, if you're fluent in Hmong, if you're fluent in Somali, if you're fluent in some foreign language, it's very, very helpful to the judges, I think.
Do you have any advice for 3Ls, and also do you hire anybody after they've maybe done a year of some work, post-grad work?
I say go for it. I can speak for myself only, of course. I actually find that I am drawn, very strongly in fact, to people who have at least 1 year post-law school experience. I've hired in the last couple of years two former clerks for U.S. magistrate judges and three former clerks to U.S. district judges. And in fact, one of the gentlemen joining me in the fall will be doing his third clerkship. And when I hired him, I said, "You sure you want to do a third year?" He clerked at the state intermediate level appellate, the federal trial court, and now he's doing a clerkship with me. So there are judges out there who want that kind of foundation in experience. So the fact that you didn't get a clerkship or you didn't apply for a clerkship during your 3L year should not dissuade you from pursuing a clerkship after you've been out for a year or two. In fact, the truth is, you'd be surprised, partly given the employment situation over the last few years. We in the federal side, and I'm sure it's true on the state side, get an awful lot of applications from big law associates finishing up their first and second year of law firm experience. So there's no disqualification in that regard.
Let me follow up by asking everyone out there a question. Other than preparing to come to this program, how many of you thought about a clerkship before starting to prepare for this? Okay, a good number. Because, you know, one of the things that we have found over the years, maybe it's getting a little better, is that, you know, folks who don't fit what I guess I would call the traditional role of law clerks have not been encouraged to apply, and have in some instances don't even know about clerkships. And so I was just curious to see, you know, get a feel for what's happening, because there was a time when maybe only 10 people would have raised their hand at this program. So at least I'm happy to see more people are sort of getting exposed and thinking about it. But, you know, there's no harm in applying whenever the spirit hits you, apply.
Judge Clark, can I add one thing?
Sure.
Please read the newspaper. Judges retire, they die in office, they get promoted, and often these things happen outside of the normal cycle, and new judges get appointed and they need law clerks. So you may find, if you just by reading the paper and staying abreast of things, that there are new judges coming in who won't be bringing their clerks with them and who may be needing law clerks as soon as they hit the ground.
And if you have any friends who are law clerks, let's say you are a 1L or 2L, but you've got a close friend who graduated and is now clerking, you know, keep in touch with those people, because they can tell you when openings come up in their court, or with their judge even. So you would be surprised where some of that information comes from. Thank you. Yeah.
So my question was kind of unique to myself. So I'm from Texas, but I did my 1L at Howard University in DC. But naturally, being from Texas and want to work and live here and also have a fiance here, it was incumbent upon me to return. So so my question was, do you find it still beneficial even if you do a clerkship, say outside of Texas, different part of the state or a different part of the country rather? And secondly, when you're reviewing resumes, is there a specific type of writing sample that you'd say is more beneficial? Say firm work or typical academic writing sample?
Is it necessary to clerk in the state where you want to work? That's the first question. The second question is, what kind of writing samples do we look at, and what do we consider when we look at writing samples?
I'll take the first question because I had actually, last year's judicial clerkship program, at least 3 came to Maryland. I think 2 went to Tony, the 3 of them came to Baltimore. We had a list of judges that didn't have clerks yet. And I said, well, are you willing, one was from Michigan, Judge C. And I said, are you willing to pack up? And she said, I will go wherever there is a job. I have, I don't have children, I have a family, I'm single, I can go wherever. I think she ended up getting that job with another judge in one of our benches. So I think it depends on the person. Most of our judges don't care. Some judges would like to think that if you're going to clerk for them in their state, you're going to stay and take their state bar and you're going to become a lawyer there. They're trying, because there's some feeling they want to promote good lawyers in their jurisdiction, so they might tend to give a preference to someone who they thought was going to stay, even if you didn't go to school here. If you were planning to take for instance, the Maryland bar, that gives them an indication that you're going to set down roots in the state of Maryland, and they would want you to clerk for them. So that's the number one. I don't know about the federal. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Judge Holland really hits the nail on the head. It's really fact-specific, situation-specific. Some judges, quite appropriately it seems to me, as Judge Holland said, view their mentoring role to include building up the bar in their location. And of course you would want, I think most judges would, if they're going to mentor a young lawyer, the preference would be that that person stay there, contribute to the community, attract other high quality people to the community, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's some judges, for example, I have 4 law clerks, so while I certainly care about my community, home of the world champion Ravens, and I want lawyers to stay in that community and contribute to that community, and so, you have a thumb on the scale if you come from Maryland and you apply to me, because I want I want people to stick around. But because I have 4, I'm willing to diversify and hire somebody, you know, from California who plans to go back to California, if that's the kind of person I think is going to nurture their own communities. So it varies, you know, widely, judge to judge. But I take your point. I think going back to our earlier discussion, if you want to have a local practice and you want people in the local courthouse to know who you are, then you want to clerk for Judge Holland. You know, because you spend a year or 2 with Judge Holland in Baltimore City, or a year or 2 with Judge Clark in Upper Marlboro and Prince George's County outside of DC. At the end of that year, you're going to know everybody. You're going to know every lawyer, you're going to know every deputy clerk, you're going to know every judge, you're going to know every judge's law clerk, you're going to know all the law firms, you're
And
probably going to get a
importantly, they'll
job.
know you.
And so, you know, these are the kinds of considerations that come into play. On the other hand, if your aspiration is to be a law professor, which means you're gonna go wherever you can get a job, you're gonna go wherever you can get a clerkship, just as you're gonna go wherever you can get, you know, appointed as an assistant professor somewhere, if that's your aspiration. So it's really individual decision making in that regard.
My law clerk that's been with me 6 years, she was first going to go to California. She took the California bar, she passed the California bar. I don't know if it was the ocean, the sun, or whatever, but she decided to stay after I offered her the position. So I was competing with the ocean, and she decided to stay in Chicago. So you know, that shouldn't deter you. Look, again, I think, you know, it's important because where you want to go work, you know, they want to know, again, you know, what is it that's going behind that curtain? And if you go outside the locale where you were clerking, it might be a little more difficult, but you still have the clerking experience. But I think it'll help you a lot more if you stay in the location where you clerked.
As far as your writing sample, judges have to read for a living. I don't pretend to speak for all of them, but I can tell you that the judges that I know, I think, would appreciate something that's very clear and very concise, something with some active verbs in it. I say death to adverbs. If you can't use a verb that conveys that action, you don't need a friend. He doesn't need a friend. So, death to adverbs. And a cover letter, I think, for a judicial clerkship probably should be 1 page.
I also just wanted to address your second question, which was the writing sample. I want to make sure it's something you wrote. I've had a number of folks who were very proud of their law review article, and I understand how the law review process works, and so do you. And so please don't send me your law review article, because I know that you may have had a version of that, but I know that's not your product. And so send me something that you can, no kidding, take complete ownership of, and send it to me, because I'm not going to have 22 other people read what you sent to me when you're working for me. So I need to know, how do you write? No kidding, how do you write? I also, because I review so many applications for every position, I give a little, maybe just a smidgen extra, if you can make it something that's powerful in a page or 2. Because if I have to read 20 to be convinced you're really good, that took me a whole lot longer. So if you can convince me in a page or 2 that you did a really fine job of analyzing an issue and articulating a view, a page or 2 is really quite enough.
I might, if I may, I might add as well on that last point, having a professor or maybe a lawyer for whom you did a summer clerkship or something attest to your writing kind of lessens the pressure on the precise writing sample that you sent. So it's important, I agree, it should be short, concise, well done, and absolutely your product, but don't forget, you also need a reference to comment on your writing ability.
Right. Thank you.
Just regarding citizenship requirements, obviously in this domestic environment, I'm a permanent resident, and I want international opportunities if they should arise, and I certainly don't want to put myself in an international situation where I'm a U.S. citizen and I'm being considered the last of the pile. And at the same time, I don't want to discriminate opportunities regarding federal clerkships. So just wanted you guys to address maybe what the citizenship requirements are on the state or federal levels.
Generally, for state, we probably don't care. But because, let me tell you why. It comes out, unfortunately, it comes out when you apply for the bar and you attempt to take the bar exam in a particular state. That's where the immigration, that's where your permanent residency really comes into play as to whether or not you could be a lawyer in the state. For the most part, it's never come up with us. I really think because most judges, when they're looking at law clerks, we're not hiring permanent. We don't, in our jurisdiction, we don't have staff attorneys. I'm not looking to hire a permanent lawyer. And if I were, that lawyer would already be barred in the state and would have already passed whatever immigration hurdles there were.
Not to mention there is a professionalism process before you are admitted to the bar in Maryland. There is someone who will do a background check, they will do interviews, and they will make a recommendation as to whether you are suitable to be a member of the bar.
By the way, in keeping with the long-standing professional technique of answering a different question where you don't know the answer to the question you've been asked, you do go through an FBI fingerprint screen with the feds. Is that true?
For you, not for us.
Not for the state, but with the feds. So you don't want to leave any surprises out there.
But we're going to find the exact answer to your question, because that's a good question. That's a good question.
I did want to also mention, I do quite a bit of work with international students here in the U.S. as well, and I worked with a young man from Malawi who just graduated from the University of Tulsa, and he was able to get a clerkship opportunity. So I think it was state level. I think it varies from state to state. So you need to ask, I think, before you, but remember what I said, don't take yourself out of the process. Make sure you disclose that. Make them tell you no. That's my suggestion.
And my question is, I'm a 1L, so I have, I guess, a little bit more time to kind of try to figure things out. And I'm asking is, do you have more targeted advice for like a 1L who's trying to figure out exactly, where you want to go and how you want to go about doing and getting the internship?
As a 1L, what I would suggest is try to get into an externship, to try to extern for a judge. And that'll start leading you along the path in terms of becoming a law clerk if that's what you ultimately want to do. And aside from developing your writing skills and your research and analytical skills as well. But so this way, when you are prepared and you got the time, you could apply for a clerkship. Also, I would talk to the seniors in your school that that are moving on, to see where they're going, if they're going to clerkships for judges, because again, as was mentioned earlier, that's your network. And if they hear later on that someone is looking for a law clerk, they might suggest you. So I would start using your network within the school in terms of finding possible positions that will be opened up later on in the future.
Joining your state bar association as a law student member, and go to the annual meeting of the State Bar Association. There's always a cocktail party for the judges the first night. You go in a very, like the setting we're going to have tonight, it's very casual and relaxed and very cordial. There's always a chance, if you're a member of such an organization, to meet judges in a non-formal context, and that's the way you make contacts.
Let me also suggest to see if your law school has an ASPER program, because you can go do what we call internships for credit, and that gives you a semester of hanging out with the judge. And that's how I think 3 or 4 of my law clerks came to me through the ASPER program, and they were in first and second year, and I said, well, we had a great time, we liked your work product, and if you want to come back and clerk after you're done, it's your job, but you need to let me know by a certain date if you want it, because some folks have other things that they want to do or that become available to them. But so an ASPER program, you can get credit and have that opportunity, it would be wonderful.